Hello people. So I've been playing all 3 tanks in the Burning Crusade now for some time, like several months, and I'm starting to feel like I can talk about them and actually know what I'm talking about. If you want a really fast summary, Druids have the best single target damage and threat, Paladins are mega giga bis AoE tanks, and Warriors might have the best single target mitigation, but the worst threat on both single target and on AoE, and the worst damage. And because of all that, almost no one wants a warrior tank. And that's a real shame, because I think they're the most fun to play out of all tanks, rotation-wise that is. I don't really enjoy struggling holding threats. So if their damage was increased by like, I don't know, 50% or something, they would surely be the go-to boss tank in the Burning Crusades. But they aren't getting that buff, at least not in the Burning Crusades, and they are pretty much rightfully the least played tank in TBC. Anyway, I've ran out of Copian and just accepted that despite warrior tanks being the most fun in my opinion, they simply aren't very good in TBC. They work, sort of, but paladins and feral tanks just works much better. But I also have an inclination for underdog classes, which might be why I main Druid throughout all of Classic. Maybe. And I still main that actually. So protection warriors aren't very good now, however, come Wrath of the Lich King, they seem to be getting some major buffs and a very interesting potential playstyle revolving around big cooldowns, high mobility and good mitigation abilities, such as Thunderclap and Demoralizing Shouts, and the ability to perma AoE slow, depending on your exact talent build. Anyway, this is the first of likely 3 videos in where I'll look at the changes made to abilities and talents for the Feral Druid tank, the Bar, the Protection Paladin, and the Protection Warrior. And so this one is about the Protection Warrior. First off, we're going to take a look at what new abilities have been added and which old ones that have been changed. Then we'll move on to the talent trees and finally look at their potential playstyles in both heroic dungeons and raids. Also, take everything related to exactly how Wrath of the Lich King is gonna be played out with a grain of salt. No one can know for sure at the moment what composition will be the strongest in raids, what class will be the best, and so on and forth. Metas will very likely be different from what they were back in the day. Players are generally more skilled at the game now, and the guides you currently find are either 11-12 years old from vanilla Wrath of the Lich King, or they're based on private servers. Although guides from vanilla WoW private servers were very accurate, then again, vanilla was probably the most finely studied and developed of the private servers by a factor of like 10. I'm sure you remember Nostalrius peaking at like 20k on a single server. Anyway, with that said, let's get into the good stuff. So generally, protection warriors have received major buffs on almost everything, at least when it comes to abilities. I don't think there's really anything that has been nerfed for them, and considering the state of Prot warriors in TBC, it just makes sense. The most notable changes in my view are the following. Shield Wall has been changed to a 5-minute cooldown, but it still reduces all damage by 60% for 12 seconds. On top of that, there are both glyphs and talents to improve this ability. Revenge is now a giga hard-hitting ability. If you compare rank 7, which you learn at level 70, with TBC and Wrath of the Lich King, it does between 414 to 506 damage in TBC, and the same rank in Wrath of the Lich King does between 963 to 1175 damage, as well as adding a 30% scaling to your attack power. And on top of that, there is an absolutely huge talent for this ability, and be aware that Revenge does not scale with anything in the Burning Crusade. Shield block has been changed and is arguably greatly buffed. It is now a 1-minute base cooldown and doubles your shield block value, as well as increasing your chance to block by an additional 100%, and it lasts for 10 seconds. With sufficient talent, this one becomes really good, but we'll get into that more later. Thunderclap is no longer AoE capped, allowing for much better AoE threats. It also has its base damage increased by about 50%. Its cooldown has however been increased by 2 seconds. Defensive stance now only reduces damage done by 5% instead of 10%. Shield Slam does about 31% more damage in Wrath of the Lich King than it does in TBC, comparing the same rank, and talents also further improve this ability. Devastate has had the weapon scaling increase from 50% to 120%, which is 2.4 times bigger. Also, the static component has been increased by approximately 380%, at least for rank 3 when comparing the Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King. Warriors have also been given Enraged regeneration, which is similar to a druid's regeneration, frenzied regeneration. However, it consumes an Enrage effect, instead of rage, that is, and restores 30% of your total health over 10 seconds on a 3-minute cooldown. So overall, warriors have had all base abilities buffed quite significantly. Note that I'm comparing the same ranks in the Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King. I mean, obviously rank 8 is stronger than rank 7, but in this case rank 7 is stronger in Wrath than it currently is in the Burning Crusade, and it's a massive increase. On top of that, they made it so Revenge and Thunderclap also scales with attack power, which they currently aren't doing in the Burning Crusade. There are more abilities still, but we'll go over them as they are unlocked in the talent trees. Also note that there are many buffs and changes, but I'm only going over the ones I deem important. Shield specialization has been massively buffed compared to its former TBC state, and will now generate a significant amount of rage whenever you're tanking trash. It used to only be 1 point of rage whenever you blocked, but now it's 5 rage whenever you block, parry or dodge. Insight gives a nice 15% crit buff to Heroic Strike, Thunderclap and Cleave. Improved Revenge is a crazy strong talent, buffing the damage of Revenge by 60% and making it hit 2 targets instead of 1. Obviously something huge. Shield Mastery increases the block value by 30%, as well as reducing the cooldown of shield block by 20 seconds. A big reduction considering the base cooldown is only a minute. Improved Spell Reflection is potentially a good talent depending on the situation. It allows your Spell Reflection ability to work on your entire party instead of just you, and it reduces your chance to be hit by spells by 4%. Improved Disarms add a 10% damage taken to the target for the whole duration of the disarm effect. Potentially quite a strong cooldown on bosses in heroic dungeons when everyone else pops their damage cooldowns, and disarm has a minute cooldown. But imagine if 3 damage dealers does 3k DPS for 10 seconds, right? That's 9k per second, and 10%, that's 900 extra damage every second, for a total of 9000 extra damage during these 10 seconds just because you clicked disarm, making it a very hard-hitting ability. Now, although Vigilance is a new talent with utility in raid tanking, I don't think it's too good in heroic dungeons, so I'm actually gonna skip that for this build, I think. Improved Defensive Stance essentially gives you a permanent 10% damage increase whenever you're tanking something, as it enrages you for 12 seconds whenever you block, parry or dodge. Safeguard is potentially very strong in certain niche situations, depending on exactly how this will work out. Warbringer allows you to charge, intercept and intervene in any stance and while in combat. Massively increases your mobility and making you the most mobile tank in Wrath of the Lich King. Critical Block gives you a 60% chance to block for twice your block value, as well as giving Shield Slam another 15% crit chance. This talent scales extremely well with your Shield Block cooldown and Shield Mastery talent. I'll show you the math so you can just pause if you like to watch it or look at it. But on a massive pack, simply using these talents and the Shield Block cooldown together can decrease your total damage taken by 86%. And this is without including any armor, parry or dodge, it's just this cooldown and the talents. And remember, in this situation, Shield Block only has a 40-second cooldown. Damage Shield. Whenever you take damage or block an attack, you return 20% of your shield block value as damage. A very nice passive talent that does quite some damage. Imagine a mob taking 200 damage simply because it attacked you. That's like Thorns but on giga steroids. Sword and Board gives your Devastate another 15% crit chance and gives both Revenge and Devastate a 30% chance to reset the timer on your Shield Slam, as well as making it free for the next 5 seconds. Finally, Shockwave is a 20-second cooldown, doing a big frontal cone stun with a 4-second duration and also dealing quite some damage. I think it scales with 75% of your attack power. This is quite the potential when we consider the possible playstyles further in the video. Finally, with this build, we have another 19 points to spend, at least at level 80. We could now go down into the Fury tree and grab the Enrage talent for another 10% damage with almost 100% uptime while tanking something, the perma AoE slow ability Piercing Howl, 20% more attack power or health from your shouts, 40% more attack power reduction from Demoralizing Shout, 2% crit value and 1 extra attack power for every 36 armor you have. If we instead go down into the arms tree, we're looking at 5% more parry, more rage from charge, 20% higher bonus damage to critical strikes, the deep wounds talent, and whatever you'd like for the remaining points. If you also sacrifice Shockwave, which is arguably useless on single target fights, you can either get Sweeping Strikes from the arms tree or Death Wish from the Fury tree. Note that through glyphs, Sweeping Strikes can be made free. Another potential build is this one. Pretty much all of your abilities have their critical chance increased by 20% from talents alone. That's critical chance, critical hit chance, critical strike chance. And your critical strike bonus damage is increased by 20%, and whenever you crit on something, it will bleed for 48% of your weapon damage over 6 seconds. Okay, so how do you play Protection Warriors in Wrath of the Lich King in PvE then? So first of all, here's sort of the basic rotation as it seems to me. Always apply and sustain Thunderclap and Demoralizing Shout for mitigation if that seems useful. Devastate will work as the basic spam ability, and whenever you get Revenge available, you should instantly use it. Also make sure to use every free shield slam that you can get from Revenge or Devastate. If you start capping on Rage, use Heroic Strike or Cleave to dump it, and on bigger packs prioritize Thunderclap for AoE damage. Anyhow, what makes Protection Warriors special isn't their base rotation. Instead, they stand out with many big defensive cooldowns and great mobility. Their downside, compared to the Protection Paladin or Feral Druid, is a somewhat lower base mitigation, however that is likely compensated for with both Demoralizing Shout and Thunderclap. This combination of big defensive cooldowns and high burst mobility makes the Protection Warrior appear especially well suited for massive AoE packs and dungeons. You could pull 2 packs by simply running into them, then you charge into a third, you can intercept into a fourth, maybe use your throwing weapon to grab a fifth, and now you can intervene back to your party member and LOS around the corner to grab the packs up. As they start gathering, you could perhaps start with a Shockwave into a Shield Block. Remember how Shield Block could reduce the incoming damage by 84%? Let's assume each pack contained 4 mobs. If all of them deal physical damage, you effectively take damage as if there were about 3 mobs hitting you instead of 20. When Shield Block is about to run out, you can combine Shield Wall with Enraged Regeneration and Last Stand. And once those abilities are about to run out, your Shockwave ability will be off cooldown and you can stun the entire pack for another 4 seconds. And if there's still too many mobs alive to effectively face tank, you can simply use your Piercing Howl and kite them almost indefinitely. To me, the toolkit of a Protection Warrior makes them seem like the most fun tank in Wrath of the Lich King. It provides potential to pull off strategies that no other tank could survive. The Intervene ability, the potential talents for Disarm, as well as Spell Reflection gives you tools to further benefit your party members. Although I don't think the warriors have anything particularly useful for tanking raid bosses, at least not the entire duration of the fight, they do seem to have good potential as off-tanks. The Vigilance talent to help improve the main tank's mitigation, the Intervene with the potential talent to further prevent damage from particularly nasty abilities, as well as the Demoralizing Shout with the Thunderclap, and of course the Sunder Armor. But also, Wrath of the Lich King will likely be the most balanced version of the game so far in the classic series, and Prot Warrior will most likely work just fine as main tanks, they might just not be the best one. Okay, but what about the negatives of the Protection Warrior? So while comparing it to other tanks, at least the Paladin and the Feral Druid, they seem to be the class that requires the most skill to properly pull off. Knowledge of dungeons and raids, abilities of bosses and trash, and planning how to use cooldowns seem essential to play the Protection Warrior to its full potential. As Paladins and Druids seem to have better base mitigation and doesn't have to play around big cooldowns, they allow for players new to tanking to perform quite well. While looking around on the internet, it seems that Paladins was deemed the best tank in Wrath of the Lich King, and Warrior the least good. If I had to guess, it would be because Prot Paladins seem pretty easy to play, there are no big cooldowns, and the base mitigation is good. Maybe Protection Paladins were played closer to their full potential, compared to especially the Protection Warrior, as they were simply easier to do well with, the Protection Paladin that is. Meaning that overall, people probably have better experience with Protection Paladins. Anyway, I'm sure we're all looking forward to Wrath of the Lich King. My plan is to play all 4 tanks, and I'm a bit excited to see what they will be like. I hope that there isn't too much copium in this video, but at least for now, the Protection Warrior seems like a fun tank to play. Like I said earlier, there will hopefully be videos of me going over the Protection Paladin as well as the Feral tank, and once the pre-patch is out and I get some experience with the Death Knight, I'll try and get a video for it as well. Make sure to subscribe not to miss out on any of these. Anyway, this was all for me. I'll be back soon with another video, and until then, see ya!